Welcome to the Relentless podcast. I'm your host, Andy Anderson, with my boy, Matty Lavaz.
What
How
is
are you,
up?
Matty?
What is up? What is up? How you doing?
So fucking good. And we have an incredible guest. We have Australia's success mindset queen, Katrina Ruth. Welcome to the Relentless podcast.
I'm so pumped to be here. I have no idea what's going to happen, but I know it will be absolute fire and gold.
It's always
Epic.
random. It's always crazy. Fuck. Some insane stuff happens on this podcast, but we're absolutely stoked to have you on here.
Yeah,
and,
thank you.
And again, thank you for joining us. But as a lot of people already know, Kat, you and me have known each other for a very long time. I mean, Maddie and Kat, you guys have known each other for a long time as well. And we're just constantly seeing you dominate your space, grow and evolve and take on new challenges and smash new levels of success. So we're really excited to get into your mindset today and share all that wisdom and gold with all our viewers and listeners, male and female. But of course, I know a lot of the female listeners and entrepreneurs out there will get so much from today's episode. So
And
again,
also, just before Andy asked the first question, I just wanted to give you free reign, just because you've known Andy for a really long period of time. Like, any embarrassing stories you want to share? Do you know what I mean? Like, anything that you want to explain to the world? Like, this is the time. You
I'm the
know?
only human on earth who has no
talking
embarrassing
about before
stories.
the recording started, you know?
That's it. Just this is a safe space.
Except for that red bandana I used to wear at Fitness First with my bleach blonde hair.
Oh,
Anyway,
no.
we won't get into that.
I don't remember. I blame it.
Let's shift gears. Let's take the spotlight off Andy Anderson. So, Kat, let's hear your story because I think it's so important for people to understand where you've come from and how you've developed and grown into the unique and amazing human that you are today. Because I think a lot of people they look at you and what you've done and where you're at, and I think people forget the journey and the sacrifice that they must go on in order to become the human that they want to be. So just fill us in on your journey, the short version, of course.
Yeah. So unlike, I guess, a lot of people in the online space today, or unlike a lot of my clients and even friends, I didn't have a point at which I decided to start an online business. And I guess the reason for that was that when I first came online and essentially begun building what has now become my coaching empire, if we're going to call it that, let's call it that. Today, when I began that, I didn't know that that's what I was doing. As you know, I was a personal trainer, which is where we know each other from, and I was a really successful trainer, and I was doing a lot of additional things for the gym and running workshops in our club and around the country. Just I was always looking for ways to kind of add another revenue stream or another creative stream to my life, and I guess that's been in my blood since before I can remember. Pretty much rolled out of the womb, coming up with ideas and creating them and selling them. So I was doing that as a trainer, and I was always looking to take it to the next level. But when I came online, which was in 2006, it wasn't with any idea of making money online or online business. I'd never heard those words. I'd never heard the word digital marketing or internet marketing or online courses or anything like that, because it was pretty much at the forefront of the industry. There were very few people that were doing anything like that online at the time. And for me, it was really just essentially an online presence to advertise my business as a personal trainer and my apprentices and the different workshops and additional things that I was doing. And what I actually wanted and why I set up my first website is that I was hoping to position myself as a really high level trainer so that I could get into some of the big corporations in our hometown in Melbourne and, be the in-house person for fitness and nutrition and lunchtime workshops and that sort of thing. And one of my clients had essentially just hassled me, come on, you got to have a website, like this is the new thing. And I was like, I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. I can't be bothered, whatever. But I respected, this person in my life and his advice. And so I did that. And long story short, because I could certainly go into a lot of detail here, really what happened was I just gradually moved in the direction of bringing to life what I now see as being the work that I was born to do. And I guess that did start from way back before even the period that I'm talking about, because I can remember being 11 years old and reading my dad's Tony Robbins books and Brian Tracy and Zig Ziglar and Harry Beckworth and all the Godfathers in Personal Development. And I remember reading those books at 11 years old and thinking, oh, yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll write and speak to millions of people. And it wasn't even a goal. It was like a soul recognition. So as that blog or online presence built, some years later, and it was a website and it was, a brochure for my services essentially, and then it was a blog, it just kind of gradually morphed into, oh, well, what if I somehow did, I don't know, a group coaching program? Is that a thing? Can you do that? And I just figured out all these different things before the digital marketing industry really existed. In fact, I tried my hardest to find somebody who could mentor or support me to understand this whole internet thing, and I couldn't find anyone. And imagine that, right? Imagine not being able to find someone to mentor you in an online business. So I really just figured it out myself and built that first business, which became a business, the online fitness one, into a nearly $1 million per year business with all $99 and under products. And honestly, I had no clue what I was doing. I was just following what was inside of me, and of course, following my natural, and I learned sales and marketing and coaching skills and my abilities to get people great results. And from there, bit by bit, it just headed in the direction of where it is now, which is essentially supporting those people who know they're the true 1% within the 1% to be all that they came here to be, as an entrepreneur, as a creator, as a person who chooses to operate from a belief of life being purposeful, and that we are here for a reason, and that, we can make a crap load of money, impact and serve and help so many, people. And my clients, those who resonate with my message, are truly here to serve millions. And we can do all of that, but it comes from a place of we were brought here for a reason. When we say yes to that inner truth, then everything works, not just business and money, but every different area of life. So that's what I'm passionate about. And that's a little of how I got to where I am now.
I love that. I don't hear too many stories where it starts off that young. And I love that it's like at 11, you had this kind of, it's just like, didn't seem like it was that much of a big deal in a way. It was just kind of like, yeah, okay, this is an option. This seems like the right thing to do. Where I think a lot of people kind of go through living the 9-to-5 kind of treadmill life for a period of time, and then they hate it, and then there's a deep realization that, and then they maybe meet someone like you, and it's just like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. Because you had the belief from the beginning, I imagine it was completely different, but did you kind of know that you didn't fit into the normal way of thinking of just like, I'm going to go to university for 10 years and then I'm going to earn $60,000 and then it's going to slowly go to 150, and like, did you notice that you were different early on? And did you see a lot of people kind of like not, I guess my question is, did you not gel, and were you aware of that not gelling with the normal way that most people kind of live their life?
Yeah, it was like I simultaneously lived these parallel lives. And, I think we all have different pathways we could take, that each of which could come to fruition in a positive or wonderful way. And for me, I was simultaneously the very academic, top of the class, from a very academic family, sort of school square. I was very shy, introverted. I literally, on my lunch breaks for most of my primary school years, I would crawl under the bushes in this little secret area that I found with my books, and that's where I would be just reading and daydreaming, basically. I mean, I had friends. I wasn't like a complete loner, but I was very in my own head, and I wanted to be the best, but I was also expected to be the best within my family. It was if you brought home an A, it was like, oh, well, what went wrong? Where was the A plus? So that's the flip side. I was brought up in an environment where I was extremely supported and believed in by my parents and every teacher or adult I encountered. Honestly, I was so blessed. All I can remember is, you can do anything, you decide, Katrina's a high achiever, she's this, she's that. I guess the flip side of that was the expectation of perfection, which is definitely something I still catch myself out on and have to be a bit careful with to this day, thinking that everything has to be exactly right and perfect. So because of that, I was on this, I guess, normal path of, well, you're extremely intellectually intelligent, you get the top marks in the class, obviously logically you're going to become something that fits that model. And so my plan, and I guess the family plan, was I was going to be a lawyer. I was supposed to be a lawyer that I chose that because I like words. I like arguing and winning arguments.
I
I
love
like,
that. I like arguing.
I like being creative with being able to pull a problem together and see the solution, the maths. And also because I chose it because it was a high achieving pathway, and it was like, oh, okay, well, you want to be the best, then you should be a lawyer or doctor. Don't want to be a doctor? All right, I'll be a lawyer. So it was like, that was the pathway, and that was what it was all geared around. But then at the same time, it was like there was this other internal part of me that I didn't think about or, you know, process it all or articulate or understand until much later. Like, probably not even in my 20s, probably not even till my early 30s, I started to truly understand that this part of me had always been there, and that she was just moving in the direction of living not an ordinary life. And so I was always bringing to life something that matched that, but I wasn't thinking about it, is what I'm saying. Like, yeah, I read those books when I was 11, but I was also an Avon lady when I was 11. I was making $1,000 a week. When I was 8 years old, I was starting clubs, and I would charge, you know, you had to pay your entry fee to join the club, but you weren't allowed to just get the money from your parents. You had to basically bring me a spreadsheet that showed how you had earned the money and that you could demonstrate the work ethic.
You did that when you were 8.
My club dance and the initiation, and we would march around my bedroom, and then I would monetize the club. I'd put them all to work, and myself, and we'd do, you know, like bake sales and sell things door to door, and I'd always come up with ideas of what we could sell, and then I would just reinvest that money back into the club, and we'd have fun, basically. But to me, that was normal, and it was just natural. And even since I was 3 years old, I was selling the citrus fruit off my grandparents' tree door to door, or my drawings, or I was always selling stuff on the schoolyard. So yeah, like, it was always there, but it wasn't acknowledged. And I guess what happened is that as I got older, I got the grades and all, I got into law, you know, I achieved the thing, but I'd already started to feel pretty worried about myself during those final years of school, because I'd noticed that, like, the rebel side had set in, and I was such a good girl. I was the teacher's pet. I was so dependable. And I realized the power of branding in that, because I was seen in a certain way by all of my teachers and all of the adults in my life. I realized I could get away with whatever I wanted, and nobody seemed to notice, because my branding was so strong as the good girl, the teacher's pet, the top of the class. So in the final few years of school, I just skipped so many classes. I didn't do anything dramatic, but I skipped so many classes. I would, I don't know, rock up and not wear the uniform, whatever, just things like that. But I really just started checking out. And so I was worried about that, because I was noticing that I didn't seem to want to give the focus anymore to this proper pathway. I still pulled off the grades, and I got all the top student awards, which honestly astounds me to this day, considering my attendance. So that's the power of branding for you. And then once I got into uni, the short version of what happened, so I don't talk for another hour on this question, which I'll do with every question if I'm not careful, is I just realized, like, oh, nobody's watching me, nobody's validating me, nobody notices in a lecture theatre of 400 students whether or not you're there. And I just kind of stopped going, and I was terrified for myself that I was going to ruin my whole life. And I just sort of floundered around a bit. I pretend to my parents I was still going to uni, but what I was doing was giving students facials, skincare treatments in the retail section of the university. This was at Monash in Melbourne, and there was a health food store, and I pitched them on the idea that I put a little sign out the front that said, stress relief for students, $50 for a facial. And I brought in all my skincare products from home and some big W face towels, and I had no qualifications at all to be doing this, but that's what I was doing. I was just going to university and making money and pretending that I was still attending, and until I got up the nerve to basically say, yeah, I'm not going to do this. And so then it took those years. I became a personal trainer after that, because I was passionate about fitness, and because I honestly was like, well, this is something that I love, I'm good at, I can make good money with it, you know, I know how to sell. But it was pretty much my answer to, oh shit, I'm fucking up my life, I don't know what to do, I'm supposed to be a proper person, I'm supposed to be a lawyer, and now what, I'm a personal trainer? Like, what the hell? That's how I felt at the time. Now, obviously, yeah, wow, I just see how the whole time, and there's so much more I could add to that story, but those are the highlights, I guess. The whole time what I was doing was exactly what I teach people now, and why I'm so passionate about it, which is just follow those breadcrumbs, yeah? Like, what is the next one thing? What is the soul nudge for right now? Not ever, and I understand this now, and I just teach it so adamantly. At the time I didn't understand it. I genuinely thought I was fucking up my life, but it's not ever, does this make sense? It's not ever, does this fit into the written plan for your life or the expectations maybe of anyone else in your life. And I was fortunate in that my parents ultimately supported me at that young age to, figure out my path. I know a lot of people don't have that, but either way, we all have that ability to choose. Am I going to back myself to do what I know is right for me, even if I have no idea what's on the other side of that void? People often say to me now, oh, when did you decide to build your online business, or when did you decide to become an internet marketer? And I'm like, well, I technically don't know if I still ever actually made that decision. It actually just kind of happened
Right.
because I was following flow.
I love that. Crazy. And so insane that you've just had this like primal instinct to do business and sell just consistently for such a long time, which is super inspiring.
It's really
But
unique as well.
super unique. Yeah, absolutely. Even to have the guts to do those things at such a young age, it's crazy. So tell us a little bit more about mindset, because you are Australia's success mindset queen, and we all know how important, forging, conditioning, creating the right mentality and mindset is to build a business and be successful. But when did that actually drop in for you? When were you like, ah, this thing called mindset, I need to
Yeah.
start working on it. I need to start creating it and learning and growing in that space.
Yeah. So something I say to my clients a lot is that it's the thing that it's always been. When you fully settle into the aligned path, let's call it, for your messaging, your business, your soul work, your purpose work, and you get to that place, or you return to that place where you're like, oh my God, like, yes, this is it. This is the thing. This is so me. You're going to look around and you're going to be like, yeah, this is the thing that it's always been. Like, this is the same thing from decades ago or whenever it was. And so when I was a trainer, when I first became a trainer, which was quite young, 2019 or 20, something like that, and it was before personal training even existed in Australia. Nobody had heard of it at the time. I just loved it at first because fitness, and I had become passionate about fitness and I wanted to learn more and grow more in that area. I definitely loved and recognized the ability to make a lot of money as a trainer, and I certainly did. And throughout the era that I was a trainer, I'm pretty sure, the highest paid trainer in the country. And so I was unapologetically, just monetizing left, right, and center and growing. But really what I loved about fitness and personal training, and particularly that when I was in the city, when I was in the gym where you and I worked together, Andy, my clients were very high level people. They were 1% type people within the corporate world. And I just wanted to understand their mindset. So for me, it felt, again, it was that thing of like, it was natural and I didn't realize what I was doing, or that it was unusual what I was doing or unique, until years later. And so what I mean is, when I would meet a new client, you do your little needs analysis, obviously, like, why are you here? What are you wanting to achieve? Blah, blah, blah. But for me, I always wanted to completely break that person down and break them open. And I wanted to understand every bit of the inner workings of their heart, mind, soul. And I would just have pretty much every person, like 8 to 9 out of 10, crying on the couch in the members lounge on their first session, kind of like, oh, I thought we were going to do squats. And I genuinely at the time was like, but why would I do that? Like, yeah, we'll get there, like, whatever. Why would I take you into the gym if I don't fully understand why you're here? Because otherwise you're just going to quit, like, most people that come to the gym. So I need to really understand it. And sometimes people get pretty angry at me, like, what kind of questions are these? And it didn't stop with that initial conversation. I just remember all my sessions, like, yes, I wanted to deliver a good workout. And I think that technically speaking, I was a good and even a great trainer, but I wasn't obsessed with, the inner minutiae of like periodization or scientific programming or whatever. I was like, yeah, it's interesting, and I would learn more and study more. But what I was obsessed with was understanding what this person is really about. And so many of my, true 1% or high achieving clients ended up leaving their very, very high paying, very amazing jobs, careers. One guy was a brain surgeon, and I remember him coming in one day, and he was still pretty young, like he was fairly newly, out of study. He was like, Kat, I've decided to stop my work and just go travel for a year and essentially figure out what I want to do. And I wanted to say thank you to you because it's because of our conversations I know that this is not the path I'm meant to be on. And I was just like, I was so like, wow, like I was so humbled and awed. And I was also so like, do not tell your parents that you're a 27-year-old personal trainer.
And don't tell them I helped you.
Right. But he wasn't the only one. There were so many. So for me, it was always about understanding the person. And even And even when I built the fitness business online, and I built the online fitness business to, great success all around Australia, and I was Australia's female fat loss queen at the time, I had a lot of media and a lot of attention, a lot of results, but it was always about the inner game. And one of the reasons why I shifted over, which was in 2012, and I rebranded under my own name, and I decided to take the business and success side of things online, which was something I'd been doing offline for, I don't know, at least a decade by that time anyhow, was because I was sick of talking about the nuts and bolts of fitness and whether or not you could eat fucking rocket instead of spinach. I was like, oh my God, it doesn't matter. Just get your inner stuff sorted. And so I wanted to shift over to that. And then what happened was, like a lot of people, I'm sure a lot of people can resonate, I kind of switched like one surface-based thing that I was positioning myself as for another. And then within a year or two, I was like, oh, like, why am I just talking all the time about the intricacies of your marketing when, like, sure, it's relevant, it's not irrelevant, and it's interesting, it's not interesting, but what really matters is, are you in alignment? Are you being true to yourself? Are you living according to your values? Are you trusting yourself to follow that soul guidance? Because marketing, sales, like, that comes from a place of being planted into who you are, in the same way that being in amazing shape, fitness, health, nutrition is a follow-on to what's going on internally. So yeah, I guess it was just the thing that was always there, and eventually I admitted that to myself, and that took me however many years it did, and it took me a few goes back and forth, and honestly, like, I still sometimes, like, remember why you're here.
So I'd love you to break it down a little bit more for our listeners, if that's okay. The thing that's always been there. Yeah, I think that's a profound statement to have a think about. So, maybe we have a sense of it. We have maybe an invitation to follow the direction. Maybe we ignore it. And I think the example that you just gave about the guy who was a brain surgeon is something that a lot of people can relate to. It's like, well, my parents, your parents wanted you to be a lawyer. Maybe his parents wanted him to be a brain surgeon. We have these family or cultural expectations of what we should do. And then there's something else that we need to pay attention to. So can you break that down? Like, what is that? And maybe a little bit about how do we tap into that? How do we maybe listen to it or acknowledge it?
Yeah. So the thing that's always been there, you can think about, is there a philosophy or a statement or a truth or a yearning or whatever you might want to call it that you have found yourself coming back to again and again? For me, I've journaled since I was 6 years old, and I've actively journaled to do with dream life creation for over 20 years now. So since I was maybe early 20s, and I noticed that I kept writing this one statement over and over again, which was, I just want to inspire, educate, motivate, and empower driven women to be all that they came here to be. And I just want to hang out with other badass women all around me. And I mean, my work's not exclusively for women. I welcome men into my programs, courses, coaching, you name it. And I always have, but my marketing is dominantly for women. And, that's pretty apparent if anyone looks at my work. And I guess that's where my deepest calling has always been, is for the driven human. But in particular, I've just felt like, I want to surround myself with other badass driven women who get that it's about that inner stuff. And so I'd write this statement over and over again. Like, I want to inspire people. I want to empower people. I want to, motivate them. I want to educate them. And anytime I would kind of write about my values or my deepest desires or try and go into some visioning, all this stuff would always come out. And I would tell myself, and then some of my earlier mentors also said to me, but that's too wishy-washy, or it's not tangible enough. It's, vague. And so you can't just do that. Like, you have to do, I don't know, something more structured, basically. And essentially, bit by bit, I learned something that's another, I think, powerful statement that I'll give you, which is, nobody else knows better than you what is right for you. You can hire the best person in the world. You can spend the most money on your mentoring and invest in yourself. And I hope that you do invest in yourself. But nobody, no matter how much money they've made, no matter what their credentials are, what they've done, who they've coached, you name it, nobody actually knows better than you what is right for you. And so it is about stepping over the line to be willing to back yourself on something that doesn't make sense, or that maybe, as happened to me, you've had people directly tell you that won't work and you can't do that. You can't just make money from, following purpose, Kat. That's cute. I heard that multiple times, and I heard "that's cute" specifically multiple times, which still irritates me, honestly. And I remember thinking, really, maybe you can't make money from purpose, but you just fucking watched me. And yeah, I'm not ashamed to say I had some "I told you so" moments when I outran all of them, basically, monetarily. But I don't remember what your exact question was, but essentially it's about what are the things that you've wished it could be that maybe along the way you've told yourself, well, that's not tangible enough,
Right.
or who am I to do that, or why would I be allowed to get away with that? I think those are some really big things that cause people to hold themselves back. They think it needs to be more tangible or more clear, or they're somehow waiting for some sort of heavenly sent, laminated and approved permission slip, instead of realizing that that comes from within and you already have permission to be fully you.
I love that. I love that. And I guess for people listening, I'm curious about this. So if you have someone that is starting out potentially, and there's always this period where you're learning skills and wisdom, and then obviously you're speaking about really tapping into your intuition, right? So to make your decisions based off truly just knowing within, you really have to trust yourself and trust your intuition and wisdom. So I guess my question is, how do you know, or how do you trust yourself and also balance that out between, actually sometimes you just don't know shit, you know what I mean? Like if you're learning and then you're trying to trust, without, I guess, fucking it up. And you're allowed to fuck it up, by the way, so there's no, like, you're not going to die. But for me, I'd be questioning myself, going into a new realm, and I'd be like, okay, I feel like this, but the expert's telling me this. Like, how did you trust yourself enough in order to make that call?
Yeah, good question. I think trusting yourself and following your own intuition it's a practice and it's a discipline. And the best way to understand it is it's like a relationship with another human. So if somebody had a partner or a child or a best friend, let's say, who they barely spoke to and they didn't really listen to or interact with, like let's say a child, right? Like technically a child could be fed, housed, nurtured in those sort of ways, but never sort of sat with properly, listened to, heard, understood. Well, realistically, that parent couldn't actually say that they deeply know that child. They will know maybe a lot of things about them, but if you're not taking time and space with somebody, yeah, like I said, partner, friend, client, any person, right, who's theoretically close to you, if there's not a consistent flow of relating in some way, then you're not going to really know that person, and you're just drawing on whatever you do conceptually know about them. On the other hand, anyone in your life who you have a pretty continual flow of relating with, whether it's spending time together in person, it's conversation, it's whatever it might be, and even just being in space together and not talking can be part of that, then you get to know that person. The people that are closest to me in my life, I pretty much talk to daily or pretty close to daily. And so I wouldn't say like I know them inside and out, obviously, but I can pretty easily tell with those closest inner circle type people if they're, not feeling on their A game, if they're worried, scared, shitty, something's going on, anxious, and like I can feel them, right? So I have an open line of communication to that person, is because I'm continually in a relationship with them. And we need to be in that kind of relationship with our own soul and our own intuition, and with God as well while we're at it. And if you want to hear from God regularly, or you want to hear from your own intuition regularly, you want to hear from your own soul, well, then are you listening to your own intuition? Are you talking to it? Oh, I have no idea what my kid is thinking. Well, are you listening? Are you making space for something to gradually come out? Because you can't just sit there and demand, deep, profound answers from anyone in your life, can you? And that includes yourself. If you want to deeply know what's going on with your own intuition and your own soul, then just as if you want to deeply know another human, you need to be there in time and space for them. You can't just come at them like, here's my 10 questions so that I deeply know and understand you. It needs to be a continual thing. And so when people say to me, oh, but I'm not sure what my intuition is saying, it's like, well, then start listening. So how does that work? It might be journaling. It might be sitting even for a few moments quietly in the morning and not jumping on your phone and not jumping into reactivity and notifications. It really is just making space. And just using that example of, if you wanted to get to know another human, or you wanted to take your relationship with another human to the next level, you would understand that that means time and space, and it also means patience, and not demanding or expecting something from them. So I think a lot of people, when they want to access a higher level of intuition, or let's say they want to hear from God more, they want to be more in tune with their own soul, they're almost like, well, all right, I journaled, and like, where's the answer? So that would be like going to someone that you're not deeply connected with, or that you've become disconnected with, and being like, all right, well, I'm ready to get to know you more now, so tell me the deepest fears that are going on with you, and right, like, go.
What's in your soul?
Good luck with that. So I think that's the biggest thing. And then the other thing I will say, though, because even those of us who are pretty in tune with our intuition, who make consistent time to listen to and hear our own selves and our own souls, like you said, we can question ourselves, or we second guess, or we go, oh, is that right? Am I making it up? Particularly if maybe it's contrary to something that somebody you respect, or, a whole industry or way of thinking things, or maybe you've been burnt before, or you fell on your face before in that area, and so you're more cautious, And so that's where it's kind of like, okay, let me just clear all this noise externally and internally, and just get that connection point, like maybe go into nature or the sauna or do a workout or whatever it is that gets you connected, or just free journal some stuff, and wait till you feel that just drop into, like, I can feel me, I feel myself, I feel, like I'm here somewhere, I'm not floating around outside my own head. And then from that place, even though I'm not sure, and even though I'm questioning, or I'm scared, or I'm doubting, and even though I've been hurt before in this area, or I've made mistakes before, if I did know, then what would the answer be? And it's the first thing. And I'm saying that based on biblical principles, as far as like the first thing you hear is the God thing, the thing that comes after it is not, right? And I'm saying it based on experience as well, and over 20 years of experience hands-on with journaling, intuitive work, tapping into what's inside of me, and just understanding how this works. And in the end, when you look back,
Go away, Siri.
In the end, when you look back, you're never going to say, oh, gee, I'm so glad that I pursued that second guessing thought for so long. It's going to be, I'm so glad I finally stepped over the line to trust the thing that I just knew it was. So a lot of this work is just being willing to choose to be courageous and realize that courage is a choice, it's not an emotion.
I really love the example of time and space. I think that's a really important element of what you were talking about. Because in today's world, how easy is it to be constantly distracted? And, people wake up and they look at their phones straight away, or, it's like constant reactivity of just what's happening, and I'm always distracted, and there's something fighting for my attention with my phone, or I think your watch said something a second ago. It can be so easy to not slow down. And, one of the things that I'm super passionate about is, like, as a new dad, is the power of relationships. And it's all about time and space. You, like you said, you can't just say, I want to get to know you, let's get it done in the next 5 minutes before my meeting. It's kind of like an organic thing, and it's about quantity and it's about quality. And I think it's a great framework to think about the relationship we have to have with ourselves. I think it's a really powerful statement.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Such a important thing to understand yourself, of course, but understanding how to tune into that first thought or that first intuition to make decisions. Because I think, again, so many people are second guessing the information that's coming through and not making the right calls. And on that note, I'm super curious. What do you think is the biggest demon, like the biggest mental demon or dysfunction that you see in entrepreneurs? I mean, you work with so many of the 1%, and it's not obviously the mindset side, yes, but then obviously that then translates into millions of dollars for them and for you and everything else. But you're so good at seeing patterns in people, which is one of the things I respect about you so much. So what is one of the commonalities or the common dysfunctions or demons that you see in the 1% that really holds them back from being the best version of themselves that people could relate to listening to this?
It's still questioning whether or not they really can go all in on the thing that's inside of them, whether they really can do that, be that, have that life or area of life fully on their terms and beyond their wildest dreams and desires. It truly is. It's still, but can I really do that? Like, wouldn't that be too much? Or who am I to do that? And like you said, I work with the true one percenters. So my private clients are often making, insane amounts of money beyond people's wildest dreams or even imaginings. They're the best of the best at what they do. And as such, they are they're the untouchable person that is considered to be, like made of fucking molten steel and never questions or doubt themselves. And people put these kind of people on a pedestal and they think that person just has, superhuman confidence and certainty and whatever. And I've privately mentored these people personally, well, in this space for 7 or 8 years now. And prior to that, I was already mentoring that kind of person even back to when I was a trainer. As I said, I always had very high level 1%er type clients. But specifically now I mentor them on business and mindset and being all that they're here to be in every area of their life, not just those areas. And they still have, like, I'll just say it this simply. I've never mentored anybody who has graduated from being human. It doesn't matter how much money they've made. It doesn't matter how much of a fuck yes life they have. They've got this and that. They're jetting around here and there and everywhere on their private jet. Whatever. They question themselves. They doubt themselves. They wonder if they really could get away with such and such next thing that they dream of. And they still hold back on their next deepest desire because some part of them thinks, is that tangible enough? Is it clear enough? Or do I really have permission? Could I dare? Should I dare? Or, other things like what would people think? But the ones that I've just said are the biggest one. And what it comes down to is identity, right? No matter where somebody's at, they're still dominantly viewing themselves through the lens of where they are at right now. And they don't know how to be that next version of themselves. And that's what I do. I come along and just like send a bulletproof shot of Katrina Ruth caffeine right up their hiney to where it needs to go.
So good. Yeah,
that sound actually takes place during the process.
I love it.
A lot of sounds take place on my coaching calls. I actually, one of my clients who's mentored with me for years told me a year or two ago, she's like, do you realize you always do a little singing note at the start of your calls? I was like, no, I don't. She's like, oh, you've done
Always.
it. And I listened back, I was like, oh my God, I'm always singing without noticing it.
I love it. Hey, one of the things that we love about what you're doing is you're unapologetic. You're standing out. You're a badass woman in this space, helping other women. You work with men as well, but helping other women tap into what's their soul purpose or what their goals are to be all they can be. It's an interesting time to be alive because women have been suppressed for a really long period of time. And then I think it's kind of gone the other way now. So it's like the women's movement is back to suppressing women in a weird way. It's kind of like the pendulum's gone one way to another. And it's an interesting time to be alive. And my question is do you find with women more than men that they have to deal with a little bit of an identity thing around, like, is it okay for me to be a successful entrepreneur and a mum, for example, and how do I balance these things? And so maybe, have you experienced that yourself? Is that something that you ever had to overcome? And is that a conversation that you're having with women?
I think there's always an element of, can I really do or have or be all these different things? Is that okay? Is it going to come at the cost of, whichever area of my life that I value? I've certainly been judged at times, not recently that I'm aware of. I honestly feel like I just opted out of the general idea of any sort of online hate or judgment years ago. And for the size of my platforms and business and whatnot, that's quite telling. The energetics of it matter. You see people online who are like, oh, I get so much hate all the time. I'm like, yeah, because you keep stating it and putting it out there. You need to choose whether or not you want to opt out of that. And obviously still from time to time I'll get some form of pushback or whatever, but it's actually exceptionally rare. Whereas there was a period there where I was more in that vibe, which is almost like I see a lot of entrepreneurs maybe a bit earlier on in their journey doing it where it's like, oh, I'm getting haters and I must whatever, and people are judging me or saying this about me, and it's like, yeah, all right, well, keep feeding that way, don't you? Or just flow through it honestly and keep your eyes on your own path. And so I guess what I'm saying is, yes, theoretically there's going to be somebody out there at any given moment judging you or imagining and I've had these comments years ago, like, oh, well, if you've built that and you're that successful, you must not be a good mum. Like, I actually had that from one of my now longest term private clients and a dear friend as well, she is. But she said that when she initially was going to sign up for me, she was blatantly judging me that I must be a terrible mum if I'm that successful. And she just, told me her triggers, as a lot of people do. And it's understandable.
That's our first coaching session we need to work on.
I don't 80% of my new clients on the first session, oh, I used to hate you. I'm like, yes, I'm familiar with this conversation. I don't know why you all like to tell me, but okay. And I think it's kind of natural because I think we can be really judgmental. And I think it's also partly as women how we figure things out, though. I know for me, when I notice, and that, that comes down to the work that someone's done as well to have the observation around it. But I know for me, if I feel triggered by another woman or I feel like, oh, is she whatever, I'll notice it, observe it, and then I'll be like, okay, well, my mind is not understanding yet how that could be possible. So why don't I start to imagine how it could be possible, right? Because what if she really is in alignment and on her path and achieving at this level of excellence in every area of her life? Maybe I want to understand that more. So I do think that underneath a lot of judgment, women to women, that's what's going on. It's kind of like a need to understand it or a desire to understand it. But that being said, honestly, some people are just, wanting to stay stuck in their whatever level they're on and just not at a point of being open to believing that things could be different. All in all, to sum that up, I would say it's critical for women to keep their eyes on their own path and feed the thing which they want to grow. Water the thing that you want to grow, feed the wolf that you want to live, whatever the terminology is. That's so important. So if one person out of 100 or 1,000 or out of a whole group of people is like, well, are you whatever, or do you really think whatever? Not to say you should ignore it. Is there something there for me to consider? But a high percentage of the time, actually, it's not relevant. And it's like, I wasn't talking to you anyway. I'm going to be over here doing my thing. I'm going to keep backing myself. And I guess where you can get your reassurance on from that, male, female, whoever you are, is, well, are you in a relationship with your own self and soul, as we already discussed? And if you are, well, then you bloody well should know what you're doing because you're listening to yourself all the time. So why don't you just carry on? And I've got to say, because I do privately mentor a lot of exceptional men, and I've done that in some format for years. It's not really how my online brand is marketed at all, but men just come to me behind the scenes and have for years. And I'm such good friends with so many incredible leaders and entrepreneurs and CEOs and whatnot around the world. And men have their own version of this as well, for sure, which obviously I can't speak to, from the perspective of being inside a man's head or heart. But a lot of pressure seems to be put on men as well to be a certain type of man, to be, a strong man or a masculine man or whatever, but also to not be, I don't know, masculine somehow at the same time. So I think both genders have, just a shit show of stuff that could be considered something that would weigh us down or drag us down if we wanted to consider it that way. Or it could be, and I choose my own path anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And it really just ties into your lesson from before. It's about tuning into you, right? Tuning into
Yes.
and understanding yourself and being able to filter, I guess, the rules and the agendas of the world, which really everything we just spoke about is exactly that. It's rules and agendas that have been placed upon us, ways of thinking that we should be or not. And unfortunately, if we sit in that and we believe it, then it rules our lives, and we can't rule our own lives, right? So I think that's so powerful.
Yeah, and I just want to add one thing on that. I think the online space perpetuates some sort of idea that you should have to overcome or argue or respond to a lot of these conversations. And one of the most powerful lessons I ever learned, which was from one of my dearest mentors and friends to this day, Kevin Nations, was you don't need to reply. Like, your entire reply can just be no thank you. You don't need to answer it or nothing, right? But, oh, don't you think you should blah, 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 blah? No.
Yeah.
And women in particular, I would say, are not so great at that a lot of the time, because we want to prove ourselves and we want to make our point. And I'm like that as well, for sure. But it's a practice and a discipline to, like, okay, is this purposeful? I'm going to invest all this time and energy proving myself, or I'm going to go back within and back then I get to choose myself and just keep doing that, because you don't need to understand it. This is between me, God, and soul.
I love that. Really
It's
tapping
epic.
into what's truly important and what's not.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've worked out about the online world is I think some people just want to argue for the sake of arguing, and one of the things that I'm getting from what you're saying is you're really just asking the question: is this worth my time? Is this worth my energy? Is this, what am I going to get out of it? What happens in the end?
That's success. I mean, you nailed that. That's success in a nutshell to me. Like, the one of the core truths of what I teach is, are you giving this moment in front of you for what this moment is for? Like, what is the one next thing you're
Right.
meant to be doing? What is the next aligned action? What am I meant to be doing right now? Because otherwise you're just going to spend your entire life being pulled by everything and everybody else except for your own soul and truth. And so that's what you're going to create. So this is where discipline to flow and discipline to soul and discipline to truth, is the crux of any truly successful business in life.
I love it. Your message is very refreshing, and I think it's unique. It's different to how a lot of, I don't know if I know you're a business mentor, but you're much more than that, because you're helping people on this deep soul level as well to be able to express themselves. They just end up expressing themselves through business a lot of the time.
Right.
How do you approach fear? Because we all come across fear, and I think that the last podcast we did, or one recently with Akshay, was an amazing example of, his message is confront your fears, face your fears on a daily, and don't let your fears be the thing that you're using to make decisions with. So it's like, I want to start my own podcast, but I'm afraid of that. Okay, I won't. Instead of, a podcast is going to help me achieve my goal. I'm afraid, therefore I must. What's your philosophy on fear and how to move through it? And specifically, I'd love to know, how do you integrate that with the message of listening to yourself? And I'd love to throw this in if it's okay, because I think sometimes people will say, I'm listening to my fear, and I think my fear is my intuition, and my fear is telling me, that I need to not do this. And so I'm going to listen to that. And I think they kind of, it's like it's a misunderstanding of what you're talking about. And then they play a small game. Like, I've had someone say, I really want to do your course, but the moon is not in alignment again for like the fourth time in a row, and I can't. And I'm like, okay, how's that working out for you though? How long do we have to wait for the alignment to happen? So yeah, I'd love your thoughts on that.
Firstly, that line of thinking is precisely why I only work with a very particular type of woman.
Right.
Secondly, so I've had people use my own lines against me, against themselves, I would say, quite frequently. Oh, my soul told me. I'm like, oh, really? Your soul told you to sit on your ever expanding ass on a couch? You're like, yes, that's interesting. Honestly, it just comes back to a similar principle to what we just said, in that, all right, I like to think of fear, and I teach on this a lot. Like, think of it like, firstly, fear is not of you. It's not part of you. It's certainly not from you, and it's not from God. It's not from soul. So let's identify it as what it is, which is an entity separate to you. So let's imagine it's right there, and like, oh, hi, there you are again. I like to teach this in a way that makes it a bit light and kind of funny and smart-assy. So it'd be something like, oh, okay, really, you're telling me such and such. You're being a little repetitive. I feel like you already said this same thing last week. At the very least, you could walk in here with a new script. But you know what? I've heard it. I've considered it. I've taken it to the board. No, thank you. Won't be following those suggestions today, fear. On your way. And then another thing I like to use as, I guess, a teaching framing is, like some email lists, some marketers, you can unsubscribe from their email list, and then they're not following their GDPR compliance or whatnot, and they keep on emailing you. And they pop back up in your inbox, and you're like, all right, motherfucker, I already unsubscribed from your list 8 times this year, but clearly you're going to keep emailing me. No problem. I'm not going to take it personally and have a meltdown about it. Unsubscribe again. So when fear keeps coming back, as it will do, because you are human, and also sometimes fear is helpful and purposeful, You need to identify, is this helpful? Is it purposeful? When I walk into my bedroom last night and there's a freaking spider the size of my head, a level of fear is helpful and purposeful about that. I'm not just going to be like, okay, little buddy, like one of my brothers would be,
Right.
let's fill up together and enjoy the night. So fear can come along for a reason. But when we're in that continual conversation with our own soul, we should have, and we do have, the discernment to know whether or not fear deserves to be listened to. And I love how Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote one of my favorite books, Big Magic, puts it in her book, Big Magic. And she says, fear's always going to be there and it can come along for the ride, but it doesn't need to be in the front seat and it doesn't need to get access to the radio or the music. So, all right, you're here. You seem to not be leaving, even though I've dealt with you multiple times and you're getting kind of boring and repetitive now. Well, you can sit over there and you're not getting access to the music or the tunes. And honestly, being that I coach so many extraordinarily successful people, I'll tell you one of the key defining factors of those true one percenters is not that they don't experience fear, uncertainty, or doubt. It's that they know how to be in the dance with it like that. They know how to identify it for what it is and be like, yeah, cool, got it. Interesting argument. No, I'm going to be back here to what I'm meant to be doing right now.
Yeah, I love that. I love that so much. And I love how you explained. I think you nailed it. I think especially in regards to business, people often look at fear and think it means something bad is going to happen with certainty, rather than identifying it, like you said, that it's not part of you. And really, it's a signal to do a risk assessment. And then when you do a risk assessment on your fear or on the action, do the pros outweigh the cons? And if they do, then move forward. And I think people internalize fear so much and make it mean that dread, bad is definitely going to happen. And that's, one of the things that holds people back so much. So I love watching you help people move through that. And I've seen it so many times. It's powerful. It's life-changing, in fact.
Thank you. And yeah, it's also a habit, I think, and that's part of it. So whilst I think there's benefit at times to digging in and understanding our fears, why am I feeling this? What am I thinking this? Why would I choose my choice anyway? And those sort of things can be really beneficial. I think there's also a time and a place, more frequently than what people realize, to essentially be like, get thee away from me, Satan, because that's what's going on. No, I don't need a conversation about it. Out you get. And back to purpose. Because if you keep on always wanting to explore and dig into every part of it, what you're doing is you're engaging in negotiation with fear, essentially. So you're going to continue to be kind of stuck in that. And a lot of the time we just need to break that pattern and break that habit and show that we're not here to mess around.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's the simple reminder that what you focus on is what you get. And if you want to make that your energy and your homework, then you're going to get more of it. Now, we're recording this at the beginning of 2023. And so, the beginning of the year and, the wrapping up of the previous year, most people are thinking about their goals and what they want to do in life and what they want to do in business. And one of the things that I love that what you stand for is really questioning, I think, the level of the goal that people are setting. It's kind of one of the messages that I'm taking away from this is that so many people, and I can relate to this, so many people set really average goals based on what they think is possible versus maybe what they really, truly want. I've heard so many stories of people getting to the end of their life and sharing, I regret not doing this. I regret not saying no to this thing. And I regret not saying yes to this thing. For people that are at the beginning of the year right now, or even if they're in a stage where they're asking themselves, what is it that I truly want with my life, with my business? And then they've got those fears coming in, like, I hear a lot of people say this, like, you know what, I'd be happy if I could just get to A. And it's kind of like saying, it's like the person that needs to lose 50 kilos and they say, look, if I could just lose 10, that would be great. Instead of, owning it and saying, I just want to lose 50 and then I want to do this and then I want to do this. And what would you say to someone who's at the beginning of setting these goals and really wants to, I guess, set themselves free to what they could truly achieve instead of just accepting, an okay outcome in life or in business?
I mean, this life is not a dress rehearsal for another human life. right? Is how I see it. And ultimately, you have one life to live. It's this one right here. You're either fully saying yes to what's a true yes for you, or you're not. And most people will, this is the perpetual reality of humanity. Most people will give their entire lives for something or for various things that are not a true yes in their soul, because that is how society operates. Those are the constructs that are inbuilt for most people, and that will remain so, because most people, A, don't understand that they can break those constructs, and B, they're simply not willing to choose that big. They're simply not willing to choose that boldly. I mean, to me, this comes down to a belief that I have that I know not everybody agrees with, which is that I believe that those who are born to be the true 1% within the 1% in any given area of life, born to be wildly successful or impactful entrepreneurs, creators, messengers, just humans in general, and to really create an extraordinary life. I believe that already came within us, that we are already that person, and that it's not for everybody. We can either choose into that, though, or out of it. And at the end of the day, every human on earth is here to be, the fullest version of who they are here to be, whatever that looks like. But there's just no easy answers to that question, because there's a million things that could be said, and that, the entire personal development industry runs off, and that still doesn't result in most people just flicking that switch to be that person. But I guess if anyone's listening and feeling like they are teetering on that edge of, what is it? Why can I not seem to whatever? Well, just fucking shove yourself off the ledge. It is a decision. It's a moment in time. In the end, when you create an entirely new reality for yourself in some area of your life, you can talk about it all day long if you like, but actually what it comes down to is very simple. You weren't doing it because you weren't doing it. You didn't do it because you didn't do it. And then eventually you just did. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's a pitfall that people fall into, looking for wanting to understand these things more. And of course, I'm not opposed to that. I teach a lot of things to help people understand these things more. But in the end, it's very black and white, and it's very, very simple. You're either in this camp or this camp. There's no in between. You're either in the camp of, I'm a person who says yes to what's inside of me, and I have developed, and a lot of the things we've spoken about today are things that I have personal policies around. So essentially my code, but I call my personal policies, and that I teach people to develop their own personal policies, which is, that is the rule. The rule is, when I know that something's for me, I do it no matter what. The rule is not if I feel like it, if it's the right phase of the fucking moon, if the dog didn't eat my homework, if I didn't just get my period, if, I don't know, whatever thing that is going on in the conscious entrepreneur world, guided me to. No, the rule is I operate with immediacy from soul, intuition, truth. So I think the biggest, most important thing here is the part that we spoke about being in that relationship with your own soul and self. But then from there, that's not going to change anything unless you have a practice and a habit of choosing. So at some point it needs to be, this is how I operate as a human. These are my policies. These are my rules. This is how I do it. Because otherwise you'll just spend your whole life negotiating with your own fears, as we just discussed. And you can take every course in the world. It won't change it if you're not willing to just make a decision.
I fucking love that. So really block out the fear, tap into truth, and throw yourself off the fucking ledge every day if you're listening. Katrina Ruth, you're an absolute superstar, and you're changing lives across the globe. Where can our listeners and viewers find more of you?
Yes, so you can connect with me easily on Instagram, which is at the Katrina Ruth Show, Australia's Success Mindset Queen. I'm pretty accessible despite, lots of messages and whatnot. I always just like to connect and have a little chat. If you're wanting to experience some of my work, then my free challenge is a great place to start, which is the Own Your Value and Worth Challenge. And it's at thekatrinaruthshow.com/own your value worth, not own your value and worth. And that honestly is about the understanding that your enoughness is not up for question or conversation. You are you're inherently of value. You inherently have full worthiness, readiness, and permission to be all that you are. So what we do in that free 10-day challenge is really look at what that means to you. And we look at the practicalities as well of how that would instantaneously apply into your business, your money flow, and different areas of your life. So I'm really teaching you, I guess, the energetics, identity, and inner game side of being fully you, as well as, all right, boom, let's, put this stuff to work and get results. And I have a ton of other ways that people can connect with me and learn more about me, but I'm sure you'll find them if you want to.
I love it, Kat. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, every conversation, there is so much gold. If you are watching and listening, share this with someone who needs this message because, again, this message and really crafting your mindset will change your life and help you make more money at the end of the day. Guys, thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next episode of the Relentless podcast.